Big game tonight, we thought. Lost its luster just a bit. How much so does it still hold the same value? Paul Hudrick, 97.3 ESPN.com. Of course, we're getting you ready for the Sixers and the Nets. If you read Kevin McCormick's piece over at 97.3 ESPN.com, you saw, Paul, there will be no Kevin Durant tonight, which I guess isn't all that big of a surprise. He played last night, did not play in the second half. Why play him last night? You're playing a Minnesota team, no Karl Anthony Towns. What's the message of, you know what, we'll play him against Minnesota. We don't need him against Philadelphia.
It's just a sign to me that Brooklyn really does not care about a 1 seed. Kind of one of those things, I think if they get it, great, but they are certainly not actively trying to obtain it for whatever reason. I don't know if they're, if it's just, I mean, listen, I think it's, like in years past, we've seen other teams kind of do this, like these super teams where they're just way more concerned about getting through the regular season as opposed to having a good regular season. Because it does happen where sometimes you see teams that can, they use so much effort to get that 1 seed, but the time to get to the playoffs, they don't have that much left. I don't think the Sixers will be in that category if it happens because the back end, the last 12 games or so, as I mentioned the other day, are so soft that they should, be able to go in on a pretty good note and get some guys rested up. But yeah, to me, it just signifies that the Nets are prioritizing, let's make sure that our 3 big guys are all healthy and we'll figure out the rest, I guess, when we get to the playoffs, which is a little dangerous, but hey, they have enough talent. They might be able to just pull that off.
Yeah. I mean, to me, same. They look at it like, hey, let the Sixers have their fun. Let them beat us. Let them kind of get some overconfidence. The number 1 seed has not done well in the East. The Bucks have been knocked out the last couple of years, so the Nets are kind of looking at it. But would you agree that the 2 seed has a much more difficult? I mean, if you're 2, you're essentially going to have to beat Brooklyn or Milwaukee. They're going to have to play. Whoever the 2 is going to have to play the other 3rd team. So it's almost like Brooklyn saying, don't care.
Yeah, I mean, they're really, like I said, they're really banking on the fact that their talent is just so good that they can overcome it. That they, because that's the big thing with me, Mike, is that when I look at Brooklyn, you have 3 guys who are, like, you cannot question how unbelievably talented they are offensively. It's legitimately 3 of the top, 10 offensive players in the entire NBA on one team, but they're all more ball dominant players. Granted, James Harden is an excellent passer, excellent distributor, but still a ball dominant player. And you have a first-year coach in Steve Nash. So it's like you're really, really banking on those 3 guys just being so incredibly talented that it doesn't matter, which could work. But, with the Sixers, I think the one advantage they could have is that they have been playing together, that they've really become a team. They have much better chemistry than when the year started. And to your point, Mike, yeah, you're going to have to play everybody. Like that's the reality. If you want to get to the finals, you got to go through everybody. But that second round matchup, yes, you'd much rather play Miami or, if the Knicks make it out, like you'd much rather play one of those teams than have to go up against Brooklyn or Milwaukee in the second round. So yeah, to your point, Mike, I do think the Brooklyn Nets, it is kind of saying like, yeah, we don't care. We'll take on the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round and we'll beat them.
Yeah, which is interesting that they're even going to play Kyrie tonight. I mean, he hasn't played. He was taking the week off. Hey, why don't you play? The rest of us will sit out. I mean, I find that to be interesting in itself. But, lost a little bit of – by the way, LaMarcus Aldridge also not playing tonight. Not that he's
Blake Griffin.
Blake Griffin is also out tonight. So Aldridge, Griffin, Harden, Durant all out tonight for Brooklyn. I can't imagine the NBA's thrilled.
No, or ESPN for that matter, for this national. And look, I think we're all a little disappointed, right? We were all kind of circling this game and look at it and being like, I think since they made the Harden trade, I've been talking about how I can't wait to see the matchup where all 3 of those guys are out there against the Sixers of full strength, and we're not going to see it in the regular season.
Right.
That's just the way it is. So it's incredibly disappointing that we're not going to get to see that matchup ahead of the
now.
postseason.
The Nets are. It's almost like the Sixers were excited for this game. Ben's come out and said only 1 ball. They don't defend. Joel made it a point to say how important this game was. Now Doc tried to say I don't even know who's on the schedule next. Okay, but it's almost like the Nets are like, you guys have your fun with this regular season game, but do you think the Sixers, are looking at this and now like kind of deflated? Like we were looking forward to this and now,
See, I don't think so, Mike. I think to what you just spoke about is that they understand because the other thing, like there's still something at stake here too. The season series. If the Sixers win tonight, they get the season series over Brooklyn, and if it winds up being a tie after 72 games, the Sixers would get the number 1 seed. So this game does matter. It's not like it doesn't matter. So. I mean, let's just say that both teams decide for the rest of the season, we're going to coast into the postseason. This game still matters for that number 1 seed.
Yeah.
So I think if you're the Sixers, you still have the same mindset. Like, sure, like they're human beings, so I'm sure there's still a little bit of a feeling of, like a loss of luster that they don't get to match up against, the team at full strength that everyone's been talking about, that everyone says is better than them.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you're the Sixers, listen, this game still matters to us. This game could still be the difference between us getting that 1 seed and not.
What could come from this? If the Philly wins by 40, anything?
I mean, it's not like again, you're not, throwing a parade over it or anything, but it's still the matter of you won the season series. So,
okay,
again,
so you got that element. But if you blow them out, okay,
right.
You beat them without 4 guys. What if it's a close game?
It's a win. To me, I look at it as I'm not one of those guys who really looks at things necessarily like that. A win is a win. You don't look back and say, man, we should have blown that team out, but we just barely won. You won the game. It doesn't matter. And it's the NBA. The NBA is weird. Teams go on runs. You take your foot, we've seen it with the Sixers this year. You take your foot off the gas. You build a 20-point lead, take your foot off your gas in the third quarter. Teams go on a run in the fourth. They make it interesting. Stuff like that happens in the NBA. So I don't take much from – they just have to win. If they lose, that would be a bad sign. But if they win, a win is a win. Doesn't matter. And to me, it's just this stretch like we talked about before, this 7-game stretch that was looking extremely daunting. You already blew out the Mavericks. If now this Nets game isn't nearly what it was. So now all of a sudden that stretch doesn't seem quite as arduous as it maybe seems from the outset.
Well, and I agree with you. I don't care if you win by 1 or 41, win the game, move on. Whatever happened on that night doesn't happen. I'm the same boat as you are there. If they lose the game, if they lose the game, though, that whole psyche of, man, we just lost to this team and they were missing a couple guys. What's going to happen when they're at full strength? Now, they're tied right now, identical records. Philly's got a much more daunting schedule than Brooklyn does. Agree?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, I haven't studied Brooklyn's schedule super hard, but I know that, again, after tonight, the Sixers basically have 5 more tough games.
Yes.
And then the rest of the season, the last 12, it gets pretty soft.
They do. Brooklyn
they got Miami mixed in there, but Atlanta's been playing better, and they're going to be in that mix. But really, it's a schedule that they should feast on those teams.
Yeah, Brooklyn plays Philly, Charlotte, at Miami, at New Orleans. Toronto, Boston, Phoenix, Toronto, Indy, Portland, back-to-back, Milwaukee, Dallas, Denver, Chicago, San Antonio, Chicago, Cleveland.
See, I would probably say the Sixers have the easier schedule there when it's mixed in. There's a couple of, playing against Denver. Portland's not an easy matchup. Listen, New Orleans is playing better right now, especially with the way Zion's playing. Who the heck on Brooklyn is going to defend Zion? And Phoenix, I think Phoenix might be the most underrated team in the NBA right now. They are really, really good. So that's a pretty tough schedule. It's going to be tough for the Nets to again. I'm just for me, if I'm looking at it from the Nets perspective, them coming together as a team and figuring all that out without those 3 big guys playing a lot just seems like. Man, that's a really daunting task, even with the talent level.
It really stinks. I was really looking forward to this conversation and breaking this down and, who's defending who. But, you're shorthanded. They're shorthanded. I mean, I guess one question would be, who does Ben Simmons defend on a full Brooklyn team?
It's tough. I would probably, if I had to guess, and I don't know, Doc does some things that sometimes are out of my scope and I don't really quite understand them, but then he explains it after the game and it makes sense. But to me, if we're saying game 1 against Brooklyn, whenever that comes, I would imagine it would be Danny Green on Kyrie. Tobias would probably start on Durant, and then Ben would get Harden. That would be my guess of how it would start. Because I don't think you can I think you had to put Seth Curry on Joe Harris. I can't imagine you put Seth Curry on Kyrie, because I think you're asking for trouble in that matchup. I think Brooklyn's going to do a lot of things to try to get that. Like they're probably going to, screen the heck out of things with Joe Harris to try to get Seth Curry switched onto those three guys. But if I had to guess, Ben Simmons from the onset guards Harden, and then it's just kind of a chess match from there to see how the pieces fit.
All right.
When T. Stible's in the game, once George Hill is in the mix, like how is that going to play out? I think it's going to be an evolving thing in a 7-game series.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Like, any chance if Hill is back in the next 2 weeks that he could enter the starting lineup and that he would be the defender on, say, Kyrie in that kind of situation. By the time they would get to the Eastern Conference Finals, could you see a scenario that Hill has played enough that he essentially would be with the starting unit and Curry off the bench, or not happening?
I don't think it's happening. I think Doc will stick with the starting lineup. But what I will say is I 100% foresee games where George Hill is closing over Seth Curry. 100% I can imagine that. Because starting, let's be real, like starting doesn't matter that much. What matters way more is who closes. So if you get in that situation where they are just really picking on Seth Curry to start the game off, I could totally see George Hill coming in and playing that closer role. And I think, to be honest with you, Mike, I kind of think that's better. I think that line is better because not only for defensive purposes, George Hill is a ball handler who doesn't turn the ball over. You'd miss Seth Curry's shooting to be sure, but offensively, I actually think George Hill next to Ben Simmons is a better fit than Seth Curry. I mean, that's just my personal opinion. Not that Seth Curry's a poor fit, because like we said, like he shoots the heck out of the basketball. That helps Ben Simmons an awful lot too. But I just think having that extra traditional point guard in a guy like George Hill could be really beneficial with Ben Simmons, especially in the fourth quarter and kind of crunch time of games.
Yeah, tonight should be interesting because no LaMarcus Aldridge, no Blake Griffin. So we're going to get the first look at what Brooklyn, and even with LaMarcus Aldridge, I mean, he's not stopping Joel Embiid. So It'll be interesting. How do you think Brooklyn, what do you think they will throw at Joel Embiid tonight? Or will they not try to show anything in this particular matchup now that it is what it is?
I think it's the latter, Mike. And I think even if they were at full strength, I don't think you would see the full bag of tricks of what they would maybe potentially throw at him in a postseason series, because there's no benefit to it. I mean, let the guy kind of, let him feel good against you. And then, you throw something completely different at him in the postseason. With that said, I personally don't know how good of a coach Steve Nash is. I don't think anyone knows how good of a coach Steve Nash is. Is he going to be like Nick Nurse? And is he going to find that kind of right strategy where it's like, all right, I'm going to just take the ball completely out of Joel Embiid's hands and let everyone else beat me? Personally, I kind of think that is the right strategy. Or is he going to say, I want to give DeAndre Jordan a chance to maybe get him one-on-one and then just kind of randomly throw double teams at him here and there? I don't know what the strategy is going to be, because I don't really know 100% what Steve Nash is as a basketball coach. So I can't expect them to throw anything. At least I don't expect them to throw anything exotic at him tonight. I think it'll be pretty straightforward. Maybe a double here and there if Joel really starts to cook. But I don't think you're going to see anything crazy until the postseason.
A lot of Sixers questions have been coming in throughout the conversation throughout the day here. So let me throw a couple your way. Do you feel that the Nets can flip the switch?
I don't know. It's the talent level is enough where it's possible. And you have a guy like Kevin Durant and a guy like Kyrie. Both of those guys have won championships, so they know what it takes. James Harden has been on deep playoff runs. I know he hasn't won it, but he came pretty darn close to getting there and taking down the Warriors a couple years ago. So they have players, and again, DeAndre Jordan has been on plenty of playoff runs. Marcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, like these guys have played in big games. So it's not like it's a young team that's never been there before. With that said, I kind of think about the last 2 years with the Sixers and think about, the better example is 2 years ago when they get Jimmy Butler, they get Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid was so banged up down the stretch, he barely played with those guys. And it just seemed like they never quite got it together. Like they were a collection of talent. Like if you compare that starting five to this starting five, I think it's certainly more talented, but I think this is a more cohesive and a better fitting starting five than that was 2 years ago. And I think that's something you have to factor in. And again, as I talked about before, you have three ball dominant players. So how is that going to work when those guys haven't played that much together?
Dom wants to know, he says the Nets are clearly the best team in the East. They're not even trying and they won't until the playoffs. TBD to see if they have the ability to flip the switch. Do you feel like they aren't trying and it's still neck and neck?
Yeah, I mean, you just can't discount that amount of talent. When you have arguably three of the top 10 offensive players in the entire league, it's going to be really difficult. And the Sixers are a very, very good defensive team. And like, I guess the way I look at it too, like if I'm going into that series, you could argue that Joel Embiid is the best player in that series, but it's hard to say that the Nets don't have then 2, 3, and 4 of the most talented players in that series. So that's where, if the talent can overcome, for sure, but it's still a team game, Mike, right? I mean, of course, LeBron James has dragged a few really good few like kind of mediocre teams into great positions, but look at like the Warriors and their runs. Like that was still a good team. Even the Lakers last year, LeBron had AD and that team, they were good. KCP was great for them. Rondo was great for them. They needed those guys to step up. So that is still to kind of be seen if they have the right pieces that will step up and if they have the cohesiveness that will come together when the playoffs start.
Do you think the Sixers are strong enough to make the finals, or are they missing that key player? Now, I answered and said, I don't think as constructed, Hill might be the player. I think they still need that player, and they have him. He just hasn't played yet.
I think Hill can make a huge difference. I truly believe that. That's not just lip service. I really think because of his skill set and what he can do and what they are lacking, I think he can help in a big way. I think they can make the finals. It's going to be a problem. Brooklyn's really good. I think they can beat anybody but Brooklyn. Brooklyn's going to get, but I don't think some people just say like, oh, the Nets are way too good. I don't buy that. I think it's a series. I think the Sixers will absolutely give them all they can handle. My concern, Mike, is, and it's been my concern with this team for years, is shot creation. I don't know that they have enough of that to beat teams on a regular basis. Like in the offseason, let's say you flip a Seth Curry and get whatever player you want to pick as a guy who's like a pure shot creator, that could perhaps elevate them to another level. But I think as they stand,
then you're losing one of your floor spacers.
Well, sure, but you got to get a guy who can do both, right? You got to have a shot creator that can hit an open jumper too. But I just think, this season.
Well, now what do you want, Dame Lillard?
Not Dame Lillard, but a guy there are guys who maybe have other deficiencies, but they can dribble a basketball and they can shoot from the outside. An elevated version of George Hill is not too much to ask. I'm Kyle Lowry. Like that's, a guy like that would have been perfect. Like ideally he really would have been. But I think this year, anything that's short of the Eastern Conference Finals is definitely a disappointment. And listen, the Nets series, that would be really, really difficult. And I think it would come down to 6 or 7 games for sure.
They took a little fun out of this game tonight. You'll be there. You're going, right?
Yeah, McCormick swindled me out of a game later in the season for this one. So.
Yeah, I saw this. So you flipped them for the Pelicans game?
I sure did. So I will not be seeing Zion Williamson. I will now be seeing this game tonight.
Yeah, so you got a half-ass Brooklyn team. He gets Zion. Good trade. Paul Hudrick will be there tonight for 97.3 ESPN.com. Follow him at Paul Hudrick for everything Sixers Nets tonight. It's a battle for first place. The Nets are kind of going very shorthanded, but this is a game that the Sixers have to take care of. And if they want that number 1 seed, they got to start gobbling up these wins. We're running out. About 19 games left in the schedule for both these teams down the stretch they come. All right, Paul, we'll see you Friday, man.
Sounds good, Mike. Take care.
All right, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.